Welcome to the Ogles channel. Thanks for watching today. Let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. And then we're going to focus on a game called Super RC Pro-Am. Now, I never had this game growing up. I never played it before, but I was super excited to go through it because it's actually developed by Rare. And we all know Rare. I mean, they made so many classics like Donkey Kong Country, Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, Conker's Bad Fur Day. I mean, so many great games out there. And so I thought maybe there's like a hidden gem in the Rare catalog. And I was especially hoping for that after I saw that Diddy Kong Racing was originally going to be an RC Pro-Am game. So I was like, maybe there's like an early predecessor Game Boy version of Diddy Kong Racing. And then I saw it was composed, at least music-wise, by David Wise, who did all the Donkey Kong Country games. I was like, how can this game possibly go wrong? So today we're going to journey through Super RC Pro-Am to see if it lives up to its expectations. Now, I always like to start the reviews off by looking at the box art for the game. And as we look at the box art for Super RC Pro-Am, it's a pretty standard looking racing game here. I mean, you got a little RC racer journeying around the track. You know, you got a little red one, a little yellow one. I mean, the game's in black and white, so it's hard to tell like which one is you inside the game. I presume you're the red one in the game. And of course, you got the American flag, the Canadian flag, and the UK flag in the background. And I mean, it's a pretty standard looking racing cover. There's nothing really special about it. I mean, you do have like a little explosion in the background because you can shoot missiles out. And I presume that's what that is. But I mean, it's a pretty standard cover. Now, when you start the game up here, you have a pretty standard little title screen here. And if you wait a second, you get a little picture of a race car. But there's no animation. There's no like introduction. There's no story. It's literally just simply a title screen. If you press start, you don't even get to choose like a menu of like your character, your difficulty, or your cup, or your racers, or anything like that. You pretty much just simply start the game. Like, I mean, literally, I thought it was a demo that was beginning, but I was actually getting ready to begin my first race here. And of course, when you start the race, it's an overhead racing game. And it's pretty standard here. You got, your A button for acceleration, your B button to shoot out a weapon if you collect a weapon throughout. And of course, you just simply race around the track here. Your left and right button is going to be your steering left and right. And of course, it gets a little confusing sometimes if you haven't played an overhead racing game like this, because sometimes you think you're going left and right when you're trying to go up and down. And it can get confusing, but I've played a lot of games like the Micro Machine games on NES, and so I'm sort of used to this perspective and these controls, so that really wasn't too big of a deal for me. Now, as you're journeying through the first track here, it's going to be a very basic track as far as like there's not going to be a lot of obstacles, you can't get like weapon power-ups, but there is something that's present in the first track that's going to be present throughout the entire game, and it is the ability to upgrade your car as well as pretty much buy a brand new car altogether. And in order to upgrade your car, there will be car parts hidden throughout the track. There's one car part in every single track, and if you collect it, you actually get to increase your speed, or your acceleration, or your handling of your vehicle. Now, you can only do one per track, and also there's a letter hidden in every track, and if you collect a letter, once you collect all the letters that spell out Nintendo, so it'd take like 8 tracks to do it, you can actually upgrade from one car to the next car. You go from your standard car to what's called the Speed Demon, till I believe the last one's called the Spiker. And so you go through 3 different cars, and if you collect Nintendo after you get the Spiker car, you just simply win the game. So there's minimum of 24 tracks to go through, but if you miss one of the Nintendo letters throughout the game, you can continue on past 24 and of course finish the game that way. Now, these collectibles inside the track, you may think they're sort of optional, but if you have any hope of finishing the game at all, you pretty much have to collect every single letter that you see and every single car part that you see, and if you don't, you're pretty much destined to lose like the next race or at least like 2 races after that. The game gets very difficult very fast. And so like the first few races, there's not like a lot of, obstacles. The AI is pretty easy, things like that. But after like probably race number 6 or track number 6, there's a massive difficulty spike. And when I say that, there's just tons of more obstacles to avoid. There's these giant cones, there's oil spills, there's water spills, there's sand traps, there's these walls that like just appear out of nowhere. The AI gets way more intelligent as far as like just finishing the races significantly faster than you. Very hard to catch up. You do get weapons as you continue on. You get a little option to have like a little bomb you can drop behind you, which is sort of like a banana peel, or a missile that you can shoot, which is sort of like a turtle shell in Mario Kart. But these weapons here, like at first I was so excited about it. Man, I was just bombing these racers left and right, and I realized anytime I used a weapon, like it actually worked to my disadvantage because the racer would just simply blow up and then would just fly up beside me again at a lightning fast speed. And it's almost like I gave them a boost by blowing them up. Yes, they disappear for a second, but then they end up passing me immediately after that. And it's just sort of annoying because I end up like losing most of the races before I realize, hey, do not use your weapons unless you're right at the finish line and you want to stop them from crossing the finish line. If you use it at any other point in the game, you're pretty much just asking the racer to get better and to pass you. Which is a shame because weapons are like one of the most fun parts of all racing games, and this is one of the first racing games that ever implemented weapons, and they just happen to do it sort of poorly. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these 24 tracks, but just know that the different obstacles and different power-ups, they do scatter about throughout the 24 tracks. And so the game actually does sort of keep fresh as you're going on, as far as like different obstacles to look forward to. And I say that loosely because you're not looking forward to the difficulty, but you're at least looking forward to what the tracks are going to change as you go. And you also look forward to upgrading your vehicle and then, unlocking the speed demon and the spiker, as well as just simply finishing the game. So the game actually does have things to look forward to instead of just simply, hey, here's 24 tracks, race through them, no changes at all. That'd be pretty on the boring side, where this one does try to keep things fresh. However, even though they're keeping the things a little bit fresh, the game is still very, very frustrating because of the difficulty and also the soundtrack. We need to talk about that for a second, because I said that David Wise did the soundtrack. Well, that's very loosely speaking, because he did one track in the game, which is the only track in the game. You have the track at the title screen, and then the entire game is silent except for the car noises. And that is really disappointing when you get your hopes up for an iconic David Wise soundtrack and you get literally one song. And so I was a little bit disappointed by that as well. And sort of speaking of lackluster, let's go ahead and mention the graphics in the game. They're not bad, but the graphics are pretty bland. And what I mean by that is you have 24 tracks here, and they're all completely interchangeable. There's nothing special about any of the backgrounds. There's nothing special about any of the actual tracks themselves. And so you could go through the entire game and you wouldn't really know the difference in track 1, track 10, track 20, track 24. They're all the same, except for different obstacles and different curves. There's no background mix-up to show like a jungle level or a cityscape or, there's anything. I mean, it's just simply the exact same background every single time. And I know that games at this time period could do it, because I'm going to harken back once again to the Micro Machine games I mentioned earlier. Man, that game had some awesome backgrounds. I mean, it looked really, really good. And yeah, I know that was on the NES versus the Game Boy, but hey, I mean, the Game Boy could rival the NES in so many occasions. This game could have had a little bit better graphics for the background. And I know these are like really minute things to pick apart, like a soundtrack or the graphics of the game, but honestly, when the game is just so simple as a racing game, you do look forward to things like the graphics and the soundtrack, and it's a shame that those things were pretty much absent throughout the entire experience. But as you're going through the tracks, you do finally upgrade your car from the regular car to the speed demon to the spiker, collect Nintendo again, you do finish the game, and it does say something like you're the RC champ or something like that, and it's got a nice little newspaper article here, and you're holding it up, and it's okay, it's a fine finish. But considering the difficulty of the game and how much you have to go through to get that finish, it felt a little hollow. Because I mean, I put in probably, I would say 4 to 5 hours on this game, which I know you're thinking like only 24 tracks, how does it take you 4 or 5 hours? Because you're gonna have a lot of game overs in the game. It's gonna take a really long time to just simply work through the tracks, memorize some of the tracks, and actually win 3rd place or better on all of these tracks. And so about 4 or 5 hours for me at least to go through the game. And to just simply get a screen that just simply said, hey, you're the champ, it was a little bit of a letdown, especially when there was no like really cool victory music or anything like that to accompany it. And so to me, I would probably not recommend finishing the game to the end. So if I don't really recommend finishing the game, is there any value to be had in Super RC Pro-Am? Well, there actually is one pretty cool aspect of this game that I haven't mentioned yet, and that's the ability to actually have multiplayer up to 4 players link cable. And if you and some of your buddies could actually link this game up, I think the game could be a lot more fun playing against human players than these AI players, because a lot of difficulty here and a lot of frustration was just simply because the AI players were so good, they weren't affected by the weapons at all, they weren't really affected by your speed or anything like that, and they knew where all the obstacles were. And so the AI were so good in this game that it really took away from the enjoyment of the game. And if you're playing against another human player, they're going to be affected by the weapons, they're going to be able to slow down, because of obstacles. And so I think like the game could be a lot more fun if you're actually playing multiplayer. I didn't have the chance to play multiplayer, this is just sort of speculation on my part, but if you had the ability to do it, hey, I think Super RC Pro-Am could actually be a pretty legit fun game. It would probably be more closely aligned to my experience with Micro Machines, because in that game I almost always played multiplayer, and so that's probably why I have such fond memories of that particular game. If you're just going to play single player, honestly I think there's better racing games out there, more rewarding racing games, less frustrating racing games, and just overall better racing games on the Game Boy or Game Boy Color. And so I'd probably pass on Super RC Pro-Am unless you're planning on doing the multiplayer aspect with some buddies. But what are your thoughts? Is Super RC Pro-Am one of your all-time favorite games? Let me know in the comments down below. And if there's a Game Boy game you want to see me get to sooner than later, let me know the name of that game in the comments down below as well. And of course, I'll move it up on the list of games that I'm covering. But if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above. As always, go out there, find a great game to play. Just simply have a great rest of the day.